welcome to Bike File with me, Wazza.
And me, Paul Johnston, and this is the show that each week takes the tastiest bikes of the year and puts them to the test.
On today's show, we are going to be looking at sports tourers, and we'll be judging them all in terms of style, value, practicality and performance. The one with the most points at the end is the winner.
But before we take the first of our test rides, let's have a quick look at this week's machinery. First up this week is the Yamaha Fazer 1000.
Next, it's a blood red Ducati ST4s.
Then we have the very British Triumph Sprint ST.
And of course, Honda's VFR.
And finally, something you won't have seen very often, MZ's 1000S.
So those are the bikes we've got in the show today. It's time now for the first of our test rides, which I guess is going to be the Fazer, Paul.
You guessed right, mate, yeah. Yamaha's Fazer 1000. Not much we don't know about this,
Been
really.
around a few years.
Yeah, I've ridden it plenty of times before, haven't we? Doesn't always work, does it, sticking a big sports bike engine in this style of bike?
Not always.
But I think it does on this.
Yeah, they're onto something here, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's a better price than it used to be.
Yeah, it's gone down. It's 7,000 quid now.
Or 699,999 to
recurring
you,
point something. Yeah, great value. And I say I like it, ridden it before. Let's just see what it's like
before
today.
you put that on, don't forget to take your shades off. Make a terrible mess.
Thanks very much. The Fazer 1000 features the engines and a lot of the running gear from Yamaha's flagship sports bike, the R1. When it first hit the streets, the Fazer was immediately branded as the new hooligan tool. A naked street bike with wide bars, aggressive looks, loads of street cred and stacks of power, because that engine is lifted straight from Yamaha's R1. Who could possibly want any more? But since its launch at the end of 2000, it's become more accepted into the more sensible side of biking, and it's not uncommon to see Fazers loaded up with luggage trundling off the ferry in Calais. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this bike has become boring in any way. Nothing could be further from the truth, but more and more people seem to have realised that it does actually have the ability to be ridden quite sensibly, if you like, and believe it or not, it can actually be quite a practical bike when required. Although with 140 odd brake horsepower available, it's always more than willing to entertain should you ever decide to let it off the leash. Unlike some big capacity sports bikes, the Fazer has a good strong mid-range power delivery. Then beyond that and above 6,500 revs, you're into the balmy section, where it's not difficult to embarrass the race replicas. So it's a nutter's bike. Well, yes it can be if that's what you want, but it can be so much more than that. I would have no hesitation now in heading off to the nearest motorway for a nice trip down to the south of France. You could actually have a nice relaxing ride, even take some luggage, a tank bag and some throw-over panniers, and I could stop off along the way and do a track day. And you know what? This bike would not object in the slightest. For styling, 8 out of 10. It's sharp and aggressive. Performance, 8 out of 10. A good strong engine, ideal for touring, and it'll even handle the odd track day. Practicality, 7 out of 10. Although it's comfortable, it doesn't quite offer the best weather protection. Value, 9 out of 10. At just £7,000, it's by far the cheapest in its class.
There you are, you'll need them back.
Thank you very much.
Now, are you trying to tell me that this has come over all sensible?
Well, yeah. Well, no. And yes. Well, yes,
you're confused, aren't you? You are confused.
I am confused, but you see, that's the beauty of this bike. It is sensible if you want. It'll do the mileage. It's comfortable. It's got a good, strong
enough
engine.
Wind protection.
Yeah, you've got a bit of protection, but it can be a hooligan tool if you want. You know,
which is the beauty.
Yeah, and it's cheap at 7,000 quid. There's not a lot wrong with it.
There's not a lot wrong. There's a lot right. Time now to move from Japan to Italy, because I have here a beautiful Ducati ST4s. I'd say the best looking motorcycle we've got on this test.
Well, I would totally disagree. I mean, I don't particularly like that.
What can't you see that's nice in there?
You know, Ducati's 748s, 916s, that shape, yeah, lovely. But these, I don't know, just
There is an element of compromise going on, but no sports tourer looks great. I really rather like this.
Well, I think Ducatis are just, to me, a bit too much of an acquired taste.
They can be an acquired taste, but I do enjoy acquiring it, so I'm going to go and try and acquire it again on this. The restyled 2004 ST4s was unveiled at the Milan show, and it gets the motor from the 996, which gives it an impressive 117 bhp. When this bike was first launched as the ST2 back in '98, there were a fair few jaws hitting the floor. After all, back then, the Ducati name was still far from free of its reputation for iffy reliability. Their bikes seemed to be much like Italian women. They were fast, they were fiery, and they were incredibly beautiful, but they were also able to spit the dummy completely at random. And while this was all right in a full-on sports bike for the dedicated Ducatisti, it didn't seem like the most solid of foundations for a longer distance machine like this. Fast forward a few years and we find the ST2 has become the ST4s. Ducati reliability is the best it's been, although these bikes do still need more TLC than their Japanese counterparts. It's not as fast as it was in the 996, thanks to the extra weight that the ST4 is carrying, but it's still a beautiful motor that will stir the soul, although it is a bit of a pig low down. But at least the clutch and the throttle have got a bit lighter than they used to be, which makes it a little easier to live with. Other than this, the riding position's very relaxed, and even pillions get a good deal and a decent grab rail. Best of all, this bike is still a Ducati, which means performance. And with its torque trellis frame, an Öhlins shock in the back, plus a decent set of upside-down forks at the front, this is a bike that can be set up to deliver some big surprises when you're one-up and in the mood for fun. It's the most expensive bike here, and it isn't ideally suited to all-weather, all-year use. But as an accomplished and stylish alternative to the other bikes on test, the Ducati's well worth a look. So let's see how it did on the scoreboard while I catch a few more rays. Styling, 8 out of 10. I reckon it's the best looking bike here. Performance, 8 out of 10. Strong motor once you've got it running, and a great chassis. Practicality, 6 out of 10. Not only does it need looking after, but as well as that, it's not all that good in town. Value, 6 out of 10. This is the most expensive bike here.
Here's one of them back on the old ST4s. We're shortly to get the verdict on it. You know, he thinks that's a beautiful looking bike, and I'm still not convinced. Not the prettiest thing I've ever seen. But Ducatis have never had a good reputation for reliability, but it was still going as you rode down that hill there, was it?
Definitely, no, that was all under its own steam. And no, I think I acquired some of the taste again for this. I love them on the open road. I can really enjoy spending time with this, but it's still hard to get on with in town. It's not an easy bike to live with. Heavy controls wears you out a bit.
Yeah, and reliability's always been a problem with these.
Yeah, it's a lot better than it was, but this one highlights some of the problems. It's not so much reliability, they just need looking after more than a Japanese bike. And this has only done 3,500 miles, but already one of the discs has warped and the clutch is on its way out.
Well, that's not good, is it? And this particular bike that we have here...
With the ABS.
This is the ABS version, which would set you back over 9,500.
Exactly. You'd need very deep pockets.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, and you don't want anything going wrong at that price. Well, come this way, because we're going back to good old Blighty now.
I'm feeling all patriotic,
good,
come on.
Solid British engineering here. Triumph Sprint ST. Seen these, well, they've been around for a while now, obviously.
It's old as the hills, and I mean, have they changed it?
Not much, I don't
They've changed
think.
bits here and there, new engine, but
yeah,
it's...
the odd graphic change and a different engine since the original, but essentially it's the same bike, but nice big comfy seat.
No, you'll enjoy that.
Decent fairing, and my favourite 3-cylinder engine, I don't think. Anyway, we'll see how we go on. Hailed as a VFR beta when launched, the ST now comes with a smooth and powerful 955 triple engine. Personally, I don't think that Triumph have ever built the world's best looking bikes, and the Sprint ST today looks very much like the Sprint ST when it was first launched back in 1998. However, they've always built machines that have very quickly developed a healthy reputation for being very good at their job. And that's certainly the case here. At the heart of this bike is Triumph's famous triple-cylinder motor of 955 cc's. It's fuel injected, of course, and it's incredibly smooth and powerful. It's not just the triple-cylinder motor that's high-tech on this bike, the whole thing is packed with the very latest technology. Obviously the suspension is adjustable front and rear, the brakes are superb, and that silencer down there can be fitted in 2 positions. You can have it low down there like that for touring so that you can fit this set of rather nice hard luggage, or it can be swung up with the panniers off, lifted higher, which will give you more ground clearance, perhaps for some hard cornering or just to show off the rather nice single-sided swing arm down there. I've made no secret of the fact that I don't exactly like the shape of this bike, but I have to say that the fairing is really quite good at protecting you from the worst of the wind and weather. I think this bike's best feature, apart from its fantastic strong engine which is dead smooth, is the level of rider comfort. You really could sit on this for a long time. It does seem to carry its weight though quite high up, and it can get hard work in busy town traffic, but if that's the kind of biking you do a lot of, then you probably wouldn't be buying a sports tourer. Styling, it's 6 out of 10. This bike is definitely in desperate need of an update. Performance, 7 out of 10. No real top-end rush, but plenty of usable power. Practicality, 8 out of 10. Very comfortable bike to ride and a decent amount of weather protection. And for value, it's 7 out of 10. For not much more, you can actually get state-of-the-art styling.
So Paul, there was a time not so long ago this was hailed as a VFR beta, but do you reckon she can still cut it?
Possibly for some people. Personally, not really, although the engine is brilliant. Very strong.
Real strong in there,
yeah,
isn't
dead
it?
powerful. I'm not a lover of triple cylinders, as you know, but it's a great engine. Very comfortable bike. I think more comfortable than the Fazer, and a decent amount of weather protection.
Possibly the one you could do the most miles in a day on out of anything here.
I would agree with that, yeah, but the big problem is it looks just a bit
You're right.
too traditional, if you like.
It's a little bit staid, isn't
yeah,
it?
a bit boring, the looks, I think.
Which means that for the time being, the Fazer is still in the lead. It's time for the break now, but join us again in part 2, when we'll be back with MZ's 1000S and, of course, Honda's VFR.
Welcome back to Bike File, where this week we're looking at sports tourers. So far we've ridden Ducati's ST4s, Triumph's ST Sprint and Yamaha's Fazer 1000, which is just in the lead at the moment. 2 more bikes to go. We've got the MZ 1000S, but before that, you're checking out the trusty old VFR.
Ah, the VFR. The words sports tourer and Honda VFR go together like strawberries and cream. I almost feel I barely need to ride it. I've ridden it that many times before, but I'm dedicated. I'm going to.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what you think when ridden back to back with the other bikes. That's when you can really tell. So off you go, tell us what you think.
The VFR 750 was a legendary, super capable all-rounder, which has now become this here VFR 800, which is a faster, more comfortable, better equipped version of the original bike. My heart sank when I found out we were testing sports tourers for this week's show, because no sports tourers test is complete without one of these, Honda's evergreen VFR. And sadly, very few sports tourers tests are also complete without said VFR naffing off into the sunset with the top honours. In 8 years as a bike journalist, I have lost count of the number of sports tourers tests I've done. And I've also lost count of the number of times the VFR has been the winner. It's just so predictable. I've ummed, I've ahed, I've lain awake at night desperately trying to find reasons for something else, anything else, to wrest the VFR's crown from its iron grasp. But whatever I do, it never works out. First up, the VTEC in that motor. It may give you 2 valves per cylinder low down for better torque, and it may give you 4 valves per cylinder higher up for better performance. It may also give the bike a power band that makes it feel faster than the previous model. But VTEC is old technology that Honda have pilfered from their car range, and there's still only 107 horsepower in there. The motor may only have 107 horsepower, but it's plenty fast enough on the road. The chassis makes this the sharpest VFR yet, and the same is true of the brakes, which bite beautifully when asked. It's easily all-day comfortable, 1 or 2 up. There's a clock, naturally. The mirrors are excellent. The headlight turns night into day, and there's even a centre stand. Short of the fact that this motorcycle doesn't actually ride itself, It is still one of the best bikes ever made, and it's probably the winner here. There you go, I said it again. Styling, 7 out of 10. Best looking VFR ever. Performance, 8 out of 10. Doesn't excel anywhere, but is good everywhere. Practicality, 9 out of 10. It's well made, it's built to last, and as well as that, it'll handle just about anything you want to do. Value, 8 out of 10. Just a shade under 8 grand, it's not a cheap motorcycle, but you do get a lot of bike for your money.
Well, it's not going to win outright, this, is it, was it? Because we've scored this the same as Yamaha's Fazer.
I know we have, and that is brilliant news. I mean, I don't want to take too much away from this bike. It is an excellent motorcycle, but it winning Sports Tourist test is just so dull, it galls me.
It annoys you and it annoys everyone because you can't find anything wrong with it.
You can't, it's very hard to have a dig at this
Very
bike.
accomplished in every department, and I think when you jumped on it, you knew what you were going to get, didn't you?
No surprises at all.
No, absolutely. Well, something over here that we don't know very much about.
Very different.
An MZ1000S. We won't see one of these very often, will we?
There aren't many of these around. Now, I had an MZ myself once. It cost me 200 quid. It lasted forever, and the exhaust pipe fell off on the M6.
Right, well, that's an expensive one, because I think my MZ, my old TS125, was 140 quid, and that blew up one morning going to work. But
Now, you could have about, I don't know how many thousand of those for one of these, but
this is a different animal altogether. Their own engine.
their own chassis, their own bike.
Exactly, and it doesn't look half bad, does it?
No, biggest engine they've ever made.
Absolutely, yeah. A nice sporty look, I think.
Yeah, but definitely not a sports bike. I don't think it's quite making the firepower or light enough to do that.
No, I think
As
you're
a sports tourer, I reckon it could really boogie.
Well, it could do. It's time to find out. The MZ name has been around for many years, but they've never been very well known for making stylish looking bikes. Perhaps now things are about to change. It's a good job we don't all like the same things in life, isn't it? If we did, then this bike probably wouldn't exist. But MZ say they've aimed this at the rider who wants to be a little different. Well, yeah, I can see that, and obviously they're not too bothered about having a fancy designer name on the petrol tank. MZ have no history of building anything much bigger than 300cc's, so it's no surprise that this bike is raising more than a few eyebrows with its 998cc fuel-injected 4-stroke parallel twin motor. Now, a V-twin tends to be very torquey low down in the revs, but can often run out of steam higher up the rev range. A 4-cylinder machine is usually the other way around, can be a bit flat at the bottom, but then you get a rush of power higher up in the revs. This particular parallel twin, I think, sits somewhere in between. Some usable power low down, although on this bike it's very lumpy, but it does smooth out after about 4,000. Not exactly stimulating the power on this, but I think it's more than enough for this particular bike. Its looks are definitely towards the sporty end of the market, although the riding position is not too focused. As for touring ability, it's definitely got potential, and MZ have kindly designed some dedicated hard luggage for those foreign trips. This is actually quite a nice bike to ride, quite an easy bike to ride, but something that struck me was it feels very tall, feels very high off the floor, but strangely, this seat is lower to the ground than the Fazer and the ST Sprint, but look how wide it is here, big fat hips, so if you've got short legs you could struggle. My advice would be try before you buy. Now, whether this will stand the test of time, I don't know. My old TS125 took me to work and back for many a year with no problem. The biggest problem for this bike is the price tag. It's £8,500, so it isn't cheap. And MZs have never been cool or trendy before. Is that about to change? We'll wait and see. For styling, 7 out of 10. Not really that different and looks a little bit too much like Honda's VFR. For performance, 8 out of 10. The parallel twin offers a slightly different feel to most of the other engines in this class. Practicality, 6 out of 10. Although rider comfort isn't too bad, there's little room for a pillion and there's no grab rails. For value, 6 out of 10. For a new machine, £8,500, it's simply too expensive.
Now, Paul, I'm guessing that this was a little bit better than your £100 MZ TS125 from 1902.
It was £130 if you don't mind.
Sorry.
Yes, a lot better. A great bike, actually. Nothing wrong with it. Nice bike, comfort, goes well, does everything right.
Well put together, feels like a thoroughbred. It's got a lot going for it, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's not a sports bike, we said that before, but there again, none of the other bikes in this week's lineup are true sports bikes anyway, so we can't hold that against it. The big problem is it costs just short of £8,500.
It's very expensive, and maybe that's what it costs to develop an engine, to tool up a factory to produce these. I can understand that from the ground up. But it's the same money as the Ducati. It's much more than the VFR. It's loads more than the Fazer.
Well, that's right, yeah, £1,500 more than the Fazer, more or less, isn't it? But, I mean, all right, maybe that is what it costs to produce a new motorcycle, but the bloke walking into the bike shop to buy a bike couldn't give a monkeys about that. We don't care about that. But well, let's see. Hopefully it'll do well, because it deserves to. It's a good bike and it looks nice as well.
I'd say you're right. I really hope these take off, but I don't see it happening very quickly.
No, I don't know. Well, time will tell. But that's it. We've ridden all 5 bikes now this week. Time for a quick recap on the old scoreboard. First up this week, we had Yamaha's fantastic Fazer 1000, which scored 32 points.
And then we had Ducati's ST4s, which came in with 28.
Next up, it was back to Blighty with Triumph's Sprint ST, which also scored 28 points.
Then came that pesky VFR 800, which also took 32 points.
And finally, the rather expensive MZ 1000S, which came in with 27 points. Which means that this week we have a tie between Honda's VFR and Yamaha's Fazer. Oh dear, I feel an argument coming up.
Look, there's just no way the VFR can win again.
Ah, you said again then, because it keeps winning awards, doesn't it? It keeps winning best in class, best at this, because it is the best. It's all thoroughly deserved. Great looking bike, VTEC technology in the engine, goes well, comfortable, good protection. What more can I say?
Well, it's been around since 1989. It's for people who've not moved on since 1989. It's time for a new one. It's the time for the Fazer. There's an R1 motor in there. It'll sport and tour just as well as that. It looks better, and it's a lot more fun when you want to play the idiot.
You know your big problem. You know your problem is that that's won everything in the past, and you just can't stand it winning again.
I can't see it happening again, no.
Right, well, on that basis, and just because it's you, I'll concede this week and I'll give it you.
You're all right, you are.
I know. I'll give you the Fazer. That's it, we've agreed at last. The Fazer has won our Sports Tourer shootout on this week's bike file. Join us next week when we'll have 5 more bikes on test. We'll see you then. Come on.
It had to be.
Well, the VFR is a cracking bike, you know.
It is. I don't want to
bike that.